Signs of an Eroding Democracy in the United States. This analysis, titled Signs of an Eroding Democracy, outlines 10 critical indicators of democratic decline. This is an analysis of these signs as they relate specifically to the US, why they matter, and their implications for the future of American democracy. 1. Erosion of free press. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution applies to the free press. It explicitly states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The First Amendment guarantees that the government cannot restrict the press's ability to publish information, ensuring its role as an independent check on power and a vital tool for maintaining democracy. This protection allows journalists to investigate and report on matters of public concern without fear of government censorship or interference. Significance. A free press is vital for holding power accountable, serving as a watchdog for democracy and ensuring the public has access to accurate, unbiased information. When the press is undermined, so too is the public's ability to make informed decisions, creating a pathway for unchecked authority and the spread of propaganda. U.S. context. Growing hostility toward journalists and media outlets, fueled by accusations of fake news and rhetoric branding the press as the enemy of the people, has deeply eroded trust in credible journalism. This delegitimization is compounded by the proliferation of opinion-driven news networks masquerading as mainstream journalism. Networks on both ends of the political spectrum prioritize ideological narratives over factual reporting, creating echo chambers that reinforce bias and inflame division. The wake of polarized media has fragmented the information landscape, replacing shared realities with partisan truths. Disinformation campaigns further exploit this divide, thriving in an environment where audiences struggle to distinguish between facts and opinionated spin. This dynamic has not only weakened public trust in traditional news sources, but also paved the way for propaganda to gain traction and influence societal narratives. The erosion of a truly independent, credible press is a critical threat to democracy, as it leaves citizens vulnerable to manipulation and deprives them of the impartial information necessary for accountability and informed decision-making. 2. Undermining judicial independence. Significance. The judiciary serves as a check on executive and legislative power. When political influence undermines judicial independence, the rule of law is jeopardized. U.S. context. Concerns have risen over judicial appointments that emphasize ideological loyalty over impartiality. The politicization of the Supreme Court, exemplified by contentious confirmation processes, raises fears of the judiciary being used to further partisan agendas rather than uphold the Constitution. 3. Election integrity issues. Significance. Free and fair elections are the cornerstone of democracy. Efforts to undermine the electoral process damage public trust in governance. U.S. context. Allegations of voter suppression through restrictive laws, gerrymandering, and misinformation about election integrity have sparked national debates. High-profile disputes over mail-in ballots and election certification highlight vulnerabilities in the electoral process. 4. Consolidation of power. Significance. Democracy depends on checks and balances. Centralizing power in one leader or branch erodes these safeguards. U.S. context. Recent years have seen executive orders used extensively to bypass legislative debate, raising concerns about overreach. Efforts to sideline Congress in decision-making undermine the balance of power envisioned by the founders. 5. Disregard for rule of law. Significance. Applying the law arbitrarily or using it to target political opponents undermines public faith in justice, erodes institutional credibility, and fosters a perception of unfairness. A strong rule of law requires impartiality and accountability for all, regardless of political affiliations. U.S. context. Instances where political figures have been investigated or prosecuted amid accusations of partisan motives highlight the risks of weaponizing the legal system. The perception of two systems of justice, one for the powerful and another for everyone else, deepens divisions and public distrust in legal institutions. Compounding this issue are false accusations of wrongful targeting and efforts to reclaim political targeting as a shield to evade responsibility. By framing lawful investigations or prosecutions as partisan witch hunts, political figures undermine the credibility of judicial and investigative bodies. This tactic redirects public scrutiny away from their actions and erodes confidence in the justice system. Moreover, during critical moments like impeachment proceedings, political parties, intended to serve as checks and balances, have instead sided with their own leadership, disregarding lawful accusations raised by concerned citizens and ignoring overwhelming evidence. This prioritization of party loyalty over constitutional duty has further weakened the mechanisms designed to hold leaders accountable and protect democratic norms. The selective application of justice, coupled with partisan defense mechanisms, creates a dangerous precedent where political allegiance trumps lawful accountability. To restore trust in the rule of law, institutions and political actors must recommit to impartiality and integrity, ensuring that no one is above the law. 6. Restrictions on civil liberties. Significance: freedoms of speech, assembly, and association are fundamental to democracy. Restrictions on these liberties signal authoritarian tendencies. U.S. context: crackdowns on protests, surveillance of activists, and efforts to limit the influence of certain NGOs have raised alarms. For example, heavy-handed responses to racial justice protests in recent years have sparked debates over the balance between security and civil rights. 7. Propaganda and misinformation. Significance: manipulating public opinion through misinformation undermines democracy by distorting reality, eroding trust in institutions, and manipulating the decision-making processes of citizens. U.S. context: social media platforms have amplified falsehoods, creating echo chambers where misinformation thrives. Propaganda campaigns, such as foreign interference in the 2016 election, illustrate the dangers of unchecked disinformation in influencing political outcomes. Compounding this issue is the growing normalization of leaders who blatantly lie in public and promote conspiracy theories to distract from reality or deflect accountability. When prominent figures openly spread falsehoods, it erodes societal norms of truth-telling and integrity, making it harder for citizens to discern facts from fiction. This normalization fosters a culture where misinformation becomes an accepted part of political discourse, further polarizing the nation and weakening the foundations of democracy. The pervasive use of propaganda and the deliberate spread of conspiracies have weaponized information, turning it into a tool for division rather than a means of enlightenment. This challenge demands a collective effort to restore truth and accountability in both public discourse and leadership. 8. Political polarization. Significance: extreme polarization weakens democratic cohesion and erodes the ability to govern effectively. U.S. context: divisive rhetoric has become a hallmark of American politics, where bipartisanship is increasingly rare. This polarization fosters gridlock and discourages collaborative problem-solving, weakening the government's ability to address critical issues. 9. Corruption and lack of transparency. Significance: transparency is critical for accountability. Corruption erodes trust in public institutions. U.S. context: accusations of unethical behavior, conflicts of interest, and opaque dealings have plagued multiple administrations. From lobbying scandals to questions about campaign financing, these issues highlight vulnerabilities in the system. 10. Attacks on academic freedom. Significance: academic freedom fosters critical thinking, innovation, and a well-informed citizenry. Restricting this freedom stifles intellectual growth, suppresses open debate, and undermines the ability to confront complex societal issues. U.S. context: efforts to ban certain books, limit discussions on topics like race and gender in schools, and defund higher education institutions pose significant threats to open discourse. These actions often stem from broader cultural and political battles, with education becoming a battleground for ideological conflict. Adding to these challenges is the decentralized nature of curriculum responsibility in the United States, where states determine their own educational standards. This creates the potential for vastly different takes on American history and identity depending on where students live. For instance, one state may emphasize systemic racism's role in U.S. history, while another may minimize or omit it altogether. This fragmentation risks producing a nation where students grow up with conflicting narratives about their country's past, perpetuating division and misunderstanding. The politicization of education and the absence of a unified approach to teaching fundamental historical truths threaten the collective understanding of who we are as a nation. Without a shared foundation, future generations may struggle to engage in meaningful dialogue or address the challenges of a diverse democracy. Safeguarding academic freedom and ensuring balanced, evidence-based curriculums is essential for preserving a cohesive national identity. Why this matters? Democracies rarely collapse overnight. Instead, they erode gradually as norms and institutions are undermined. These 10 signs serve as warnings for citizens to recognize vulnerabilities in the American system. By understanding these patterns, Americans can work to safeguard the democratic principles on which the nation was founded. Call to action. To combat these threats, citizen engagement is essential. This includes voting, advocating for stronger institutions, and supporting a free press. Media literacy programs can help the public discern fact from fiction, while reforms in campaign finance and electoral laws can strengthen transparency and fairness. Vigilance is the price of democracy, and staying informed is the first step in preserving it for future generations. For more, visit information-warfare.com.